A very good evening and a very warm welcome to the Buddhist Mahavihara's Facebook page here live at the Dhammadana series. Welcome back. It's been a long time since I hosted a show because we now have with us for the past two Sundays Mandarin speaker. So we have a Mandarin host, and Brother Eric has been assisting me to host the other monks on Fridays. So I'm back, I think, after 2 weeks. It's good to be back. This evening, we have a very special Dhamma session planned for all of us. It's actually a dialogue that is going to be conducted by Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana Siri Naika Mahathera and Bhante Akurala Samitha. Both are currently based in the UK in London. And we'll be discussing the topic Buddhist psychology heals body and mind. Now, this dialogue is actually a rescheduled dialogue because we were actually planning to have this in November. Actually, we had it on November 13th, but due to some unforeseen technical problems, we couldn't air this broadcast. So we are back again today. We have both the monks with us from London. I will now bring them onto the studio to conduct this evening's Dhamma sharing, which is the dialogue. Very good evening, Bhante. Reverend says.
Good evening. Good evening.
It's good to have you back. We missed you in November, Friday the 13th. I remember it was Friday the 13th when we had to cancel the dialogue. But we're glad that we are able to do this today. Let me quickly read the profiles of both these venerable monks. They are both very astute and erudite monks and are known around the world. We have Dr. Sumana Siri, who was born in Malacca to Singaporean parents of Sri Lankan origin. He was raised and educated in Singapore. He was ordained as a novice monk at the age of 11 under the chief monk Venerable M. Sumana Mahathera of the Sri Lanka Ramya Temple at the St. Michael's Road, Singapore. He then went to Sri Lanka and attended the Buddhist Seminary Bhikkhu Training Center in Colombo from 1965 to 1970. He then obtained a diploma in Buddhist studies from the University of Kelaniya in 1975 and then obtained a BA honours in Buddhist and Western philosophy in 1979 from the same university. He also has earned degrees in homeopathy and naturopathic medicine from the UK and the USA. He has read law at the University of London from 1992 to 1994. He then enrolled at the University of Oxford and became the first Buddhist chaplain as the first Buddhist at the prestigious Faculty of Theology and earned a postgraduate in Applied Christian Theology. Very interesting doctorate there because a Buddhist monk studying Christian theology. Then Dato Dr. Sumana Siri can actually speak Sanskrit. He can speak Sinhala, Pali, Malay, English, Hokkien, German, French, and Hindi, and he understands 17 languages. In 2007, the Amarapura sect in Sri Lanka appointed him the chief Buddhist monk of UK and Europe. And in 2013, the same sect appointed him the chief Buddhist monk of Malaysia and Singapore. He was also one of the first non-Indian citizens to receive the Glory of India Award, whose other recipients include Mother Teresa and Shah Rukh Khan, the famous actor. In 2014, Dr. Sumana Siri was awarded a Datoship, the Darjat Setia Pangkuan Negeri from the Governor of Penang, and he also celebrated his 50 years of monkhood in the same year, 2014. His philosophy in life is to live from day to day, moment to moment. Life is not only about suffering, one needs to transcend suffering to attain happiness, says Dr. Sumana Siri. That was a profile of the very illustrious Venerable Dato Dr. Venerable Dato Dr. Sumana Siri. Now I will read a short profile of Venerable Akurala Samitha. He is the head monk and the founding member of two Buddhist centers in the UK, the Letchworth Dhamma Nekatanaya Buddhist Center for Education meditation, physiotherapy, and counseling, and the Milton Keynes Vihara Mindfulness Meditation Center. He is originally from Sri Lanka. He was ordained in 1985. At the age of 13, he obtained his honors bachelor's degree in the year 2000 from the University of Paradina, Sri Lanka. He's also completed a master's degree in 2002 at the University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka. He has been a teacher for 4 years in Sri Lanka, and then migrated to the United Kingdom in 2003 to accept an offer from Leeds University in the UK to study for his PhD. Further, he obtained diplomas in psychotherapy, stress management, and counseling. He is the honorary secretary of the Sri Lankan Sangha Sabha of the UK. So that is the profile of Venerable Akurala Samitha. So without much ado, I would now like to invite two monks to start this evening's dialogue. We'll start, I think, with Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana Siri, who will speak first, then followed by Bhante Akurala Samitha. Venerable sirs.
Greetings from the United Kingdom. Sisters and brothers in the Dhamma, I would dedicate the merits from this talk and dialogue that we are doing to the late Mr. Vincent Harry Jayawardhan, who passed away yesterday in Malaysia. Mr. Vincent, as we know him, was a staunch Buddhist and active Buddhist, the Assistant Secretary of our Central Buddhist Vihara in 1980s. I remember first meeting him in 1981. I was very much involved with the activities of the temple since then. May the late Mr. Vincent Harry Jayawardena attain the bliss of Nibbana. Then now to my talk. Buddhist psychology heals body and mind. What is the mind? According to the Buddha, and his discourses are very clear, to the functions, the purpose of developing the mind to achieve Nibbana. We need to understand without prejudice that Buddha Dhamma, even as a religion, is not a mind-only, mere mental-based teaching, though the Buddha has given space when it comes to the thoughts, the mind aspect. The origin of thoughts, the Buddha says, is the mind. But if we conclude simply all is because of the mind, it becomes an idealism. Buddhism is not an idealism. If it is so, then it will be against materialism. That is a form of extremism. So therefore, the Buddha was following the middle way. He liked to keep himself in the middle path. Buddha has never uttered that the mind is more important than the body. He always saw the interdependence of the mind and the body equally. The Buddha sees the mind and body as one unit. Without depending on matter, he says, there can be no mind. Anyatra pacchaya natti viññānassa sambhavo. You find this in the beautiful Mahatanha Sankaya Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya. And also he was telling a Buddhist monk, I quote, who was thinking that everything is because of the mind. He said, worthless man, hasn't the mind been described by me as being interdependently arisen in many ways, that apart from a required condition, there is no mind at all. This is for the Sati Bhikkhu. So to say the mind is the main thing of everything is also not correct, because it depends on many other matters as well. Buddhism cannot be understood without Paticca Samuppada. When you understand the law of cause and effect, then you understand how things work interdependently. There is nothing independent by itself. That is the Buddha's teaching. He who sees the Dhamma sees Paticca Samuppada. First you must see Paticca Samuppada, then you see Dhamma. And he who sees the Dhamma and Paticca Samuppada, the Buddha says, he sees me. Buddha tells Ananda Thera that Paticca Samuppada, the law of cause and effect, is a deep subject, difficult to the ordinary person to understand. could be only understood when one becomes an Arhat. Why did the Buddha use Rupa, the first point in our interaction with the world, when we start to describe the body? We start with the formal or the material aspect actually, and also when it comes to description, he gives the Nama Rupa in a very different form in different places. It's not a fixed, rigid dogma. I can give the quotation if you need. Also in the Satipatthana Sutta, he starts with Kaya Anupassana, mindfulness of the body, and then only later he goes on to mindfulness of the mind and the sensations and mindfulness of the Dhammas. There is the tendency that many people think that psychology is the most important subject. But the founder of Western psychology, Sigmund Freud, was not a believer in religion at all. He was against religion and he did not consider morality or ethics either. So was Adler. But Carl Jung, the third famous one, he had some concern for Buddhism. He wrote an introduction, in fact, to the famous Tibetan Book of the Dead. In Western psychology, man is considered a person who just reacts to impulse stimulus and a mechanism of that sort, totally materialistic. But Buddhism, winning the middle way, we have to look into both aspects of the mind and the body. Moral values are not objective. They are called subjective according to science. But we have to understand that Buddhism goes beyond that system to say that Buddhism is only mind-based without objects or a totally subjective world is a utopia. It's a big misunderstanding. That Buddhism is a forum for idealism is also wrong because it's the middle way. Being in the middle way, it excludes any form of extreme views, pleasure or pain. Totally mind-made matter is often alien to Buddhist philosophy. In simple terms, mind depends on the body and vice versa. Body depends on the mind. When there is the case of dependency, that or this object has no real 100% own character, own nature. So Laksana Swabhava. Now, if you are not listening, then I will stop speaking. The subject depends on the object, and the object depends on the subject. If you ask a question, now I am the speaker, then I will be the listener, not the speaker. So an identity changes depending on the action or the mode. In the world of impermanence, that is why the Buddha says very clearly, there's no substance as such, is essenceless, no soul, he goes further. Do not identify anything as everlasting because everything is changing. No superconsciousness like a God, the creator, even in the ultimate goal. If you think God creates the world, then the problem comes who created him. Western psychology is materialistic totally, as the founder was not interested in the religious domain. So psychology does not believe that there is a mind. It believes it's the brain. And that is why it says it follows medical science and say the mind is only the activity of the brain. Now, it is very clear from our Buddhist understanding that what we have learned from the Tathagata, that this word which he says soullessness, so no I, no me, no myself, means no real identity. The problem is everybody wants to identify who you are. In England, the citizens don't have identity cards. It's different from Malaysia and Singapore. So, of the two main points of Buddhism that differs other religions is no creator God and no soul, because a soul is attached to the word permanent. So the Buddha very clearly said, those who believe in the soul are stupid fellows. When you say soul, the context is connected to eternalism. Within that context only you can have the word soul. There cannot be an impermanent soul. That's the reason. The problem is the usage of the word which gives that implication. Buddha's value comes back because he is always non-contradictory. Nothing lasts forever. Even Nibbana depends on samsara, the world. No greed, desireless situation depends on desire. So what goes or travels between death and birth could be called, possibly we are not very sure, energies, but there is no soul or mind or consciousness which is eternal. If you don't understand this, then it's very difficult for you to gain the wisdom after following the spiritual path. And you cannot understand this aspect of soul by mere logic. Remember why the Noble Eightfold Path begins with Samadhi, right understanding, not right meditation. Understanding here means proper comprehension. To understand that the Four Noble Truths of the world is the dawn of wisdom, light, bright light, and enlightenment. So when we connect with the Western psychology, we need to understand that when we understand what is the situation of the mind and body, then we come to the situation where the Buddha says that people are manifold body types, nanaka kaya, and also nanaka sanya, many types of personality types. So he comes first to the kaya, the material aspect, not the mental aspect, and then to the mental aspect as sanya later. The mind in Buddhism is an organ, but not visible. Classical psychology does not believe in this. It follows the materialistic view of the scientists, that the mind is the activity of the brain. So, based on the original suttas of the Buddha, rich in ethics, logic, and theory of knowledge and metaphysics, we have an ultra science based on the Dhamma, as it is meant not just for psychoanalysis, but to develop oneself and to finally achieve the highest bliss of life, the highest happiness, by getting rid of suffering. The purpose of Western psychology is not that. Psychology is a huge industry today in the United States of America to make more money, and its objective has been that it's a mega business. In fact, they now consider meditation as a totally non-Buddhistic method. That too has become a mainstream business there in the United States. So the American market for provision for meditation and related services is now worth more than US $1 billion and still growing. This is why great thinkers like Karl Jaspers, the existentialist German philosopher, in 1975, he recommended Buddhism to Christians. He was a born Christian because he says Buddhism is cosmopolitan and flexible, without dogmas. The great humanist, Dr. Albert Schweitzer, theologian, philosopher, and physician, who worked in Africa, who won the Nobel Prize, praised the incomparable ethics of the Buddha and wrote many articles on Buddhism in various countries and on the subject of Buddhism, which has been flourishing in different countries. He concluded that Buddhist ethics was the most refined ethical teaching. In today's corona pandemic stricken world, there is a deepening understanding that perfect health is equally for the body and the mind. Integrated health has become the evolved type of proper health science. I'm talking something that will become more relevant to our problems of the day. As we have to depend on our immune system during this COVID-19, it is accepted by many leading lights that happiness, joy, optimism helps to keep our immunity strong, and positive and realistic awakening followed by meditation helps as a defense mechanism to a large extent, but not fully. Meditation is not a pill for all ills as such. One of the largest non-profit healthcare, the University of Maryland Medical Center in America, research has shown the increase of awareness of spirituality in achieving health, enhanced well-being, not by mere medical science alone. Therefore, meditation is now the fastest growing interest and industry across all levels of society in many countries. In fact, the Time magazine since 2014 features how science has begun to validate the benefits of meditation. Apart from meditation, the practice of reasonable religious culture is also very important. So, such culture bring happiness brains or happier brains according to neuroscience. The research is very prevalent in the United States of America for the last 2 decades. And now it has gone global. Strong religious and spiritual beliefs heals faster from surgery and reduces stress and depression. It helps recovery, the abstinence of drugs, crimes, chronic pain, hypertension, skin and immune disorders. It regulates our emotions and increases focus as you are in constant and total one-pointedness. So it's not just meditation only. The religious practices certain good rituals, meaningful rituals as well. From the ritual, we go to the actual. Now, in the United Kingdom, there are apps which are called mindfulness apps in the British medical system, given free of charge. Also, books written on mindfulness based on stress reduction, which is a very popular thing here in the West. One of the books, Rethinking Nursing Science Through the Understanding of Buddhism. Another book, How Buddhism Influences Pain Control. This is a nursing handbook by Stoner Smith. Then you have Nigel North's Nursing with Dignity. He's an NHS, that is the British medical system professional. He says, Buddhism is a chameleon religion, like a chameleon. Instead, it has teachings. It has no beliefs. And in the West, Buddhism is a boundless source of tools, technologies, ideas, practices for human health and well-being, as Rogers said. In fact, the Royal College of Psychiatrists since 2001 use Buddhist Vipassana meditation as a therapy that benefits people with mental health problems. Alan Watts, the famous writer, was a born Christian, an Anglican, son of an Anglican priest. He says, the final Buddhist vision of the world, field of related functions, how everything is interrelated, is not so different from the worldview of Western science, except the vision is experiential in Buddhism rather than theoretical. Dr. Kuchenberg, who had about 20 patents, he was a Buddhist, German scientist in chemistry. He calls Buddhism an empirical science because he understood so much that Buddhism is based on empiricism, the experiential thing, not just a mere theory. There is certainly no doubt that a wise and appropriate integration of science and spirituality can lead to a better understanding on how human beings think and behave in both the micro as well as the macro context. It is not simply by knowing, but in the case of Buddhist psychology, by unknowing that the ground is prepared for the emergence of transformative insights. The plan for transformation of a human being starts not only from the known, but from the unknown itself. And this is getting into one's fundamental nature and identity, unlike the scientific paradigm of knowledge acquisition. The path of spiritual transcendence is more about releasing all mental constructs rather than constructing concepts by gathering facts, which science normally does. So that is why there's a famous saying in the English language. Indeed, a mind drop a day, if you forget about the mind, keeps the brain washed away. I want to tell you a short story. Some of you might have heard this. In the Nanjing era, Zen Buddhist master, approximately 100 years ago, met with the professor who came to see him and wanted to know what is Zen. Then he put a cup in front of the professor and one for him. Then he'd start pouring the water until the water overflowed. Then the professor shouted at him, "Can't you see that the cup is overflowed?" Then he told the professor, "Look, your mind is so full with concepts. That is why you can't understand Zen. Zen is to not have conceptual thoughts as dogma. Remember, the mind is not the brain, and the brain is not the mind." This is my expression. They are interrelated. The brain is physical, the mind is formless. The mind is, in fact, in Buddhism, Buddhist psychology proper, an organ by itself. That is why it's called mano ayatana. It's a faculty by itself, manindriya. A faculty by itself, an organ by itself, a sense by itself. Looking for the mind in the brain is like looking in the radio for the announcer. So, theoretical physics become a problem because there is no flexibility. For Buddhism, it's not a problem because everything changes in space and time. Only when you go beyond space, you don't change and you may be somewhere. So an open-minded science is needed without constrictions of pure materialistic ideas, as the post-materialist approach of science has demonstrated examples of non-physical phenomena that science itself has shown this. Modern science says that at the subatomic level, there is no mass, there is no matter actually, but only energy, and subatomic particles constantly disappear into emptiness. This is the same emptiness that the Venerable Nagarjuna, the greatest Buddhist philosopher, said. And this reappear out of nothing. How interesting. So nothing and something combine interdependently to make everything. Do not have identities as such. I am a Buddhist, I am a meditator, I am a monk, and so on. It's only good for convention. If you are in reality, meditation is to get rid of your identity after all, so that you can see reality. But stress is also, I think, mostly the same. People identify themselves. Buddhist psychology is ethics first and last. The aim is to get rid of suffering. That is mental, physical, and vocal suffering, not just mental suffering only. Not to get entangled into psychoanalysis situation, but to be free even from that dogma, but use it as a means only. We see this problem among Buddhists, including scholars. So that is why the word mind has become a very competitive and a very confused kind of interpretation given by many. The reason is the Buddha preaches for 45 years, he preached, and to different people at different places. So he used in accordance to their understanding. So three terms to denote the mind in Pali language. But in the language understanding, no two words can be the same, can be synonymous. They are always different. So you use chitta, mano, vijnana. I'm not going to give linguistic description of this, but just to explain to you that basically chitta means to appear to perceive and to know, pertains to the sensory, perceptual, and emotional functions of active conscious part of the mind. So don't mix up that all three are three or all three are one. But the Buddha have used this interchangeably in different places. And then mano means to think, the stronger part of it. It encompasses the conceptual and intellectual functions of active consciousness. And vijnana, which is normally translated as consciousness, creates a lot of problem because the root of vijnana is jna, means to know, but then it is called consciousness in the translation. So if that is so, then paticca samuppada becomes very misunderstanding. So therefore, vijnana, just keep in mind, is the major component of the mind, which also referred to as the mind in some places. Don't get entangled and problematic with these words. Try to just understand it. Because a faithful and proper translation needs 1. Normal meaning, 2. Marginal meaning, 3. And the wider meaning. Therefore, the 5 aggregate terms, chitta and mano, not only disclose what is the mind, but also the stages of the mind and the evolution of thought in Indian society. So we have to see always from the wider aspect so that we don't get problems because of language. In relation to mind-body factors and the arising and ceasing of suffering, the law of cause and effect, it is paramount that the serious student of Buddhism need to be open-minded, not fixed in theories or concepts. Because in different discourses, even paticca samuppada is not given always in the 12 factors fold. It has been given in different formats also. So don't be fixed. Look at the Madhupindika Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, because this is called the Honeyball Sutra, so sweet. Basically, this sutta deals with the problems arise when the senses get into contact with objects, how it starts, how it originates, and the problem fares forever. This helps the healing person to understand the process of dealing with the patient, especially if it is a senior citizen like in these corona times. The usual method you may change at this kind of time, especially if the senior citizen, the old person, is isolated, because isolation here in Europe is considered as a sickness by itself. More so, when seniors are not familiar with digital systems, it is not the norm for them. They may become more depressed and more anxious. Their fears about health, finance, disruption of their routines. If their mental well-being is not addressed properly, it can lead to negative results, physically, mentally, and socially. Prolonged isolation in a home care could increase depressive disorders, anxiety disorder, suicide, and cognitive impairment. Why did the Buddha say, "He who heals me heals the sick"? So very interesting that the healing of a person he has shown for us. Further research is found how it leads to heart disease also in the case of the senior citizens intervention. It is important to recognize the problems early and intervene. Good doctors would also suggest psychotherapy, primarily for tension reduction. As old age is suffering, to stay with unpleasant inmates is suffering, to miss your near and dear ones is suffering. 10 types of suffering given by the Buddha. Now, on the way to his passing away, the Buddha told Venerable Ananda a very interesting thing. Ananda was not an Arahant at that time. So the Buddha said, "Ananda, go and bring me water, because I'm going now a long journey to Kusinara." And then the Buddha sent him, and then he had to walk very far, and he came back. He said, "Master, the water is muddy." The Buddha said, Go again, second time. He came and repeated the same thing. He said, a bit better, but still muddy, not good for you. Then the third time he sent him. Then the water was clear. That made Ananda understand from a very psychological point of view how the Buddha follows the gradual path of using his consultation, that how the indirect way of consultation, how one can get things cleared off. So that is how the Buddha used his system in order to make the person understand things very clearly. Buddhist psychotherapy is a very huge subject. It's applied to treat not only ailments but also systems of how a patient, because Buddhist science is the science of the mind and body, not only one section. No one should be isolated, especially if they are sick and too old. Every person, according to Buddhism, is like a wave in the ocean. Remember, be like the dewdrop that sleeps into the great shining sea. As the story goes. I think I would stop at this point of view, and if there is any necessity, then I could describe about more the nature of the mind later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Sumana. Now we'll go on to Bhante's Akurala Samitha to explain further on the Buddhist psychology that heals body and mind.
With the permission of our most eminent Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana Siri Nayakasera, good evening everyone. Namo Buddhaya to all. It's a great pleasure to join with you all on this very special dialogue to discuss the Buddhist psychology heals body and mind. My sincere gratitude to Buddhist Mahavihara in Malaysia, in particular to Mr. Tilak Leslie for making a lot of effort to host this program. Today, we are here to get some light into our lives to find the optimum well-being health with some wisdom. The water of any rivers or many rivers reach into the great ocean, get one taste. That is the taste of salty. Similarly, Lord Buddha in Buddhist teachings mentions all teachings of the Buddha eventually leads into one purpose, that is the liberation, freedom, healing, or happiness, well-being. That is the highest gain that everyone deserves. Buddhism very clearly outlines a practical way of life, rather a dogmatic set of theories. If that is not to make a change or benefit in this life here and now, what's the purpose of having something like that? So in the optimum well-being and happiness, or we call liberation or freedom, in this nature of life, Buddha encouraged us to be constantly reflective, collective about the nature, as we are subject to be ill. We are subject to getting old. We are subject to be otherwise. Things would not be in the way we always think. This wisdom brings enormous transformation. Therefore, it not only heals in this very life, here and now. It also releases the person from samsaric dukkha, the problems in our journey. Therefore, Buddha always leads any teaching to this common factor called dukkha. Dukkha is not kind of suffering, the unsatisfactoriness that we are all going through. We can say this is how one can overcome this is situation. That is the purpose of healing. India, most of the Western or untutored systems can be using symptoms or just remedies. We have a problem, we need to find a solution. Whereas Buddhist teachings goes into a different approach, is a very profound system, and goes into finding in a more four-syllable way as outlined in the Four Noble Truths. Identifying, acknowledging the problem, and look into the causes that cause the complications. We can say it as prognosis or diagnosis, and then cure comes to the third, whereas most of our systems, cure comes the first. And then most emphasized nature in Buddhist teachings is the fourth factor, which is the cause of treatment or path to liberate us from that complication. In that path, there are not only two units as we discuss here, body and mind. That body and mind is being supported by another two factors, which is social and also spiritual. Here in the Western science or modern teachings, mind is being discussed, body is being discussed, also social aspect is being discussed. But as our Reverend Doctor mentioned, sometimes they deny the ethics, values, and we call it spirituality, but in a different, slightly different definition, not in the normal average people we believe in spirituality. Spirituality has more profound aspects in Buddhist teachings. So in that sense, body-mind can't sustain without the environment and also spirituality. So we, in the Buddhist teachings, always discuss these things in a context of four aspects: body, mind, environment, as well as spiritual spectrum. To support, to gain the optimum happiness, well-being, liberation, freedom, Buddha said that to heal the body and mind, I will quote some references, especially in the Anguttara Nikaya, the discourse on illnesses, Roga Sutta. He explained slightly two different kinds of diseases: body ailments, mental, psychological problems. Even in the Pabbajitassa Roga Sutta, explaining to the mendicants, monks, he discussed about the even complications that comes due to certain attitudes and behavior patterns. In Samyutta Nikaya, Sallattena Sutta, he explained about two kinds of pain, mental and physical, and how one can deal with those things to have the best of our everyday life. In Samyutta Nikaya, Attana Rakkita Sutta, he explained very beautifully how one can better guard oneself, especially through body, mind, and speech actions. In Samyutta Nikaya Sivaka Sutta, again he explained, Buddhism explained 8 causes and conditions for pains and illnesses. In Anguttara Nikaya, Girimananda Sutta, various kinds of body illnesses are being mentioned. In Mahavagga Pali, Vesajja Khanda, he even explains certain treatments that is recommended or used by that time for certain physical as well as psychological problems. As I mentioned, it is not only just body and mind problems, even social problems can affect body and mind very directly. Therefore, he did not exclude that aspect of it and delivered a lot of discourses like discourse on blessings, discourse on downfall, Parabhava Sutta, Mangala Sutta, Vyagrapadya Sutta, to especially educate the individuals how they can heal the body and mind. For example, traveling at untimely situations, unsuitable locations, getting into alcohol, drugs, and things being explained in that discourses as something very vital for our well-being. As I mentioned, that going beyond body mind environment into some sort of state of liberation, spiritual attainments, it is well explained in the discourse on mindfulness, Satipatthana Sutta, and discourse on Bojjhangas, enlightenment factors, to explain that we have to heal some aspects that make some very durable, long conditionalities that cause our attitudes and our complications. In Samyukta Nikaya, Asutavattu Sutta, he explained the characteristics of mind very beautifully that one can use to overcome lot of difficulties. In Majjhima Nikaya, Vedalla Sutta, Lord Buddha explained how this phenomena, prapancha, can cause problems and how one can overcome these situations. As in those references explain, the Buddhist psychology, Buddhist teachings that leads into healing the body and mind, Buddha even being referred as a surgeon, as a doctor, especially in the Sela Sutta, Soham Brahmana Sallakatto, he himself says that he can be referred as a person who can bring some healing and well-being. In Western and Eastern part of the teachings, there are lots of theories are being produced. However, they kind of segregated into certain aspect of the teachings, but in the every Buddhist teaching, it comes as a unit of four aspects: body, mind, environment, and spirituality. In that, especially, those are not being explained individually or in isolation. Those are being explained as a part of dependent origination, cause and effect theory, as they interact in between each other, and to get the best out of it, we have to balance those situations. And those are being explained as the body unit, which we can understand as certain elements and physical nature, whereas mind can be identified as four sections: feeling, perception, sensations, and consciousness. And in those imbalances, certain conditions like paranoia, manic depression, psychosis problems can certainly generate. In the West, there are different types of treatments like chemical use, medications, and also some surgeries, even some behavioral supports. Not only in the recent history, this is Buddhist teachings are over 25 centuries 2,600 years old teachings beautifully explain even the modern complications, because it's a rational teaching, not just be a belief system. At the very beginning, even Plato, Aristotle talks about an entity separate from mind as a result that psychology, the logic of psyche, the mind, started to come in. However, recent developments through certain philosophers, even David Hume, explain the combination of these. Once he says that a person can't step into a river twice. To explain this very subtle relationship, interdependency in the well-being. So Buddha goes beyond further in that explain what David Hume says, the person can't step into a river for twice. Buddha says for a person to step into twice would not exist. So that is how this nature of impermanence, nature of change is being explained. The reason I'm just emphasizing, reinforcing this word nature of impermanence, this is a powerful antidote that can bring enormous healing in the body and mind. According to the existentialism or certain other philosophies, even behavioral psychologists, now they are slowly going beyond. Some people like Gilbert Rhyme, they're talking about behavior rather than the separate entity of mind. So that goes very close hand by hand with the Buddhist teachings, and that has not been unchanged for over 2,600 years. If someone wishes to prove that is wrong, what is being said, we are very happy to accept it, but in the Western modern science is still in a very young age to grow in that understanding. Here that Buddha explained very important aspect be related to the mind due to these defilement factors that can cause so much of problems, difficulties and complications. The untaught mind can develop a lot of complications that affects the body. Also, untrained body can also affect a lot of difficulties in the mind as well. In Majjhima Nikaya, the Mahavedalla Sutta explain the nature of mind that need to be realized through our five senses, five faculties. Here, that eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, by using those five faculties, we experience our everyday life. Due to those experiences, we can develop certain characteristics that sometimes explain even in the modern aspects called OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. That is a complication of behavioral aspect of people. But sometimes there is a myth. Some people think that's it, that's me. They can't really change. So therefore, by purifying your mental thoughts, defilements, that we can change a lot of those characteristics, even OCD types, obsessive compulsive disorder problems. Going to a little bit further, for certain even depressive situations, people do use about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. There Buddha has been encouraged for the people to ditte ditta mattang, sute sutta mattang, just to be retained in the present moment, not to dwell into the past and future or go into the conditionalities of our past and future situations, through which we would not feed into the desires or certain conditionalities that can be explained as certain compulsive disorders. So therefore, good mental health, good physical health means the combination of understanding of those, how it can be interrelated. If we can't understand those things, some situations, some problems like mental health problems that affects on our life can be similar to the depression types, feeling very low, very moody, and doesn't have any interest about our life. It can also lead into guilty feeling, worthless feeling, unmotivated and exhausted feeling. Just referring these things in Buddhist teachings, how one can purify these defilements or mental states, also developing a good behavioral patterns with the body aspects and creating a good environment, understanding the wise reflections, yoniso manasikaras, in the spiritual spectrum, those things certainly can be changed and one can really enjoy the life. Otherwise, it can affect our self-esteem, sleep, appetite, even our sensual sexual drives, and even physical health. It also can lead into feeling suicidal, can be also life-threatening. Some may cause, sometimes, we have a greater part of our mothers who given us into this world. In the pregnancies, antenatal or postnatal depressions can cause, if they are not, for example, we see in the spiritual context or certain aspects, they always relate into some sort of spiritual support, and it has eliminated in the history that lot of similar situations like antenatal depressions, postnatal depressions, and even what we call SAD, seasonal affective disorders. Even in the national health, for those who are going through pregnancies, now they give a course of anapanasati meditation or mindfulness meditation to experience a proper, some people who are in the pregnancy time even take alcohol, some smoking, and it's a bad behavior explained in the Mangala Sutta or Parabhava Sutta, has a detrimental, very important effect to our well-being, not only to us, even to other people. Even sometimes, anxiety problems. Buddha once addressed them. Somebody asked from the Buddha why the monks are living very happily, and he says that Atita nanu sochanti. They are not being worried about the future. They are not being upset and sad about the past. As a result, they can certainly enjoy that state of bliss and happiness. So this anxiety can be very different. What we feel, we are worried about and tense and afraid, particularly about things that are about to happen or could happen in the future. Occasional anxiety is a normal thing. Buddha said that is a kind of a divine quality, is Deva Dharma. Even what is explaining the flight and flight mode is very important. However, it affects our life in a more serious manner, then that is not good. And it might experience some problems in sleep, also panic attack situations. It can be diagnosed with a particular disorders, sometimes generalized anxiety disorder we call GAD, social anxiety, social phobia, panic disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, PTSD. But it is possible to experience anxiety with a specific diagnosis. However, they can go on this list and they would not come into an end unless we really see this very pragmatic aspect of the body and mind and its behavior. So these can trigger by particular situations such as going out or seeing an object like spiders that can trigger it. Then they can go into many complications because they don't see this as a factor in the environment or the way of thinking. Even certain complications like schizophrenia, and it has, many views about it has changed over last few years. They don't have real, even in today, a very assertive, certain explanation of those things because they are always changing. And a lot of people question about those labels, those names, because it always changes the nature of it. However, feeling difficulties due to those things can overlapping. Certain people may have different aspects of situations like psychosis, such as hallucinations and delusions, disorganized thinking, and also speech, disconnected feeling from one another, difficulty in concentration, wanting to avoid people, lack of interest in things, not wanting to look after oneself is very important aspect of similar situation. When the mind is full of defilements, that situation can be appeared. Even that can lead into certain severe situations, paranoia, thinking that you are being threatened by someone or some other way, very scared, very worried. These are natural, and even going to hearing voices and things. The obsessive compulsive disorders like OCD also part becoming of these anxiety disorders, and people can develop a lot of unwholesome thoughts, even seeing images and worries and doubts that repeated appear in the mind. So that even can develop into certain other aspects like bipolar disorders, personality disorders, and all these manic and other episodes of feeling and depression can cause body mind unwellness difficulties if we do not have certain understanding. So here the right understanding, the wisdom is very important according to the Buddhist teachings that can save lot of aspect of our well-being and also material aspect of our life. Once Buddha said that two kind of suffering in Sallattena Sutta. When an untutored ordinary person feels pain, he suffers twice. First, his body feels the pain, then he reacts unhappily to this, so that his mind suffers too. When he feels painful feeling, sorrows, grieves, laments, beats his breast, becomes confused, so he suffers twice physically and mentally as a result of the latent tendency of aversion is reinforced. When he feels a pleasant feeling, he delights in it, so the latent tendency of lust is reinforced. When he feels a neutral feeling, he does not know it, so the latent tendency of ignorance is reinforced in him, unable to free himself of these suffering, both bodily and the mental. He turns to sensual pleasures, then goes further down in the well-being. So the Buddha said, the untutored ordinary person knows no other escape than through sensual pleasures, So he is suffering as a result of this. So this body mind, even we talk about brain or other organs, Buddha said to go, that is all concepts. What is beyond is reality. The reality is four elements. Buddha mentions quite often that imbalance of these four elements can cause a lot of problems. Just mention two sort of situations as outlined in the, this is very beautiful because these are very historical teachings. Explain in Sivaka Sutta 8 causes and conditions for pains and illnesses. What are those? Bile disorder, that means predominant nature of the internal earth element. Phlegm disorder, preponderance of the internal water element. Wind disorder, predominant nature of the internal wind element or combination of all three. Weather changes, we talk about sad seasonal disorders. Weather changes, temperature, humidity is a imbalance of fire element. Improper care, including lack of hygiene. So today we are talking about this corona, so everybody is wearing masks, washing their hands and sanitizing and all these things. And also he talks in their assaults or trauma caused by external agencies and also part of karmic aspects. Here the karmic aspect is not being really referred in the modern science because it's a little bit beyond their understanding. So an act reap a habit, so a habit reap a character, so a character reap a destiny. The principle is something like this. Whenever we deliberately act, whether the thought, word, or deed, we are likely to act this again and again. So therefore, this can cause lot of problems. Even in the Girimananda Sutta, Buddha teaches to Ananda the perception of danger, Adinava Sanya, which is very interesting. He outlined a beautiful classic list of problems. Here Ananda, a monk who has gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty place, reflect thus. Of much suffering is the body, with many dangers. Various kind of illnesses arise in the body, such as eye ailment, hearing ailment, nose ailment, tongue ailment, body ailment, head ailment, ear ailment, mouth ailment, teeth problem, cough, cold, heat, that could be gastritis or some other complications, fever, stomach ailment, faintness, diarrhea, colic, cholera, leprosy, abscesses, eczema, tuberculosis, epilepsy, ringworm, itch, scabs, pustules, scabies, jaundice, diabetics, pile, boil, fistula, bile disorder, phlegm disorder, wind disorder, a combination of them, a change in the temperature, improper self-care, ailments due to assault, like trauma upon oneself caused by outside agencies, ailments due to the results of karma. So in there, Buddha explained very beautifully all these aspects that can cause problems. Then he explained that one can, in the another situation, Buddha explained that monks, there are these two kinds of diseases that are two diseases, body and mind problems, and one can enjoy the physical health for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, even 30, 40, 50 or 100 years. But not easy it is to find those beings in this world who can claim to be mentally healthy or even a moment expect for those arahant who are enlightened, whose mental defilements are completely eradicated. So therefore, The body mind is one unit that can affect, also helps by the environment and also wisdom in spirituality. Therefore, the antidote, the final situation Buddha mentioned in four aspects. The aspect is first one self-care, second one to find the right treatment, third one to have the right support, and the fifth one is get better. So that is the final approach of the Buddhist teachings in the healing of body and mind. Those four: self-care, just look after, you are responsible of you. Nobody can heal. Even Buddha says that I can show you the path. If you don't want to do that, then there is no other way to do that. People are being very much dependent on others, unfortunately. The second thing is treatment. You need to get the right treatment, right advice of professionals. Third one is support. And the fourth one is get better. With this, I would conclude my reflection. Thank you very much for listening, and may you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante. And also thank you to Dr. Sumana Siri. But we have come to the end of today's dialogue. But strangely, there are no questions from the audience this evening. But I have one personal question. Let me mute your mic so that okay. Can you hear me, Bhante? Can you all hear me? Yeah. Um, the thing in Buddhism that we always talk about, self mortification and as well as self indulgence. There's two aspects that we should avoid and keep to the middle path. I think if you look at it in terms of the mental as well as the physical aspects of this, how do you uh, applying the middle path, avoiding self mortification and self purification as well? So maybe Dr. Suvarisari can help answer that question.
It's very simple. If you have the will to do it, not to get indulged in pain or pleasure, we put in simple terms. Self mortification is pain, the concept of pain, Pain. And then indulgence, Kamasukalikarna Yoga, is the pleasure principle. If you are not attached to the principles of pleasure only, or pain only, those who take the pain way, they think by suffering yourself and undergoing penalties, very rigid dogmas and ideas, you can be liberated. Like say for instance, somebody becomes a Buddhist and then all of a sudden he thinks he's a Buddhist monk. And then he tries to act like a Buddhist monk. He shaves his hair and then he wears white. But these are all outside movements. This is not what the Buddha wanted you to do. To purify yourself, to understand things as they really are, to be on a commonsensical way of looking at things. Overindulgence in anything is bad. Over greed is bad. But the Buddha accepts that greed is based on human life. I mean, human life is based on greed. And therefore, you need greed to sustain, to develop, and make. And you come to the point, if you are to be enlightened, then it's a different thing. Then you reject both extremes. But in your understanding of Buddhism, you don't have to become dogmatic to pleasure and pain principle. Even if you are not following the precepts of a serious Buddhist, you can still, from a point of view, not be attached to any kind of dogmas and beliefs, to look from an objective way, let us put it in a different words, a more scientific way and try to understand. Yeah?
Thank you, Dr. Suvarisari. Well, another question that I have, I think the environment plays a very important role in mental and physical health. And I think the Buddha had mentioned this in many suttas as well, especially keeping sanitation and cleanliness as a priority And this modern world of ours, we have in basically sound pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, all kinds of pollutions that we are facing, and this is quite detrimental to mental and physical health. What are your views on this, Bhante?
Oh, we are certainly against the environment pollution. We are certainly against the problem that has been caused because of science and technologies development, that people use too many cars. There are some English people who don't use cars at all, who don't go in cars at all. They go in bicycles. So we have to understand that we are responsible for our actions. All these are created by human beings because we use things which causes bad gases to the world, and then we have created the situation where the ozone layer is being depleted. This is all our human responsibility. That is why you have like Shabbat Alam in Malaysia, and we need to be more active to see that the environment is not being polluted so that we can breathe in first properly. In meditation, you breathe. If you breathe bad air, what becomes pure meditation? Simple as that. So one depends on the other. Again, the same rule. The world depends on us, we depend on the world. We need to take care ourselves and we need to take care our world as well. All of us have a great responsibility in order to have a healthy mind and a healthy body.
Thank you very much. Yes, so you asked two questions as well about this self-indulgence and self-mortification. The Buddhist path is kind of middle path. We normally explain those things in a religious manner or some Buddhist teachings, but we have to see a little bit in more secular language. That central teachings rather than middle path is a better word to use. It's not something in between everything. So that is this the best word for these is kind of having some balance, equanimous nature, equilibrium is very important thing. As also been mentioned about this environment, without which we would not. So the body and mind is a production of our environment. We are what we think according to Buddhism. We are what we eat according to the science. So therefore, today we are very happy to have this great opportunity to uh, Buddhist Mahavihara in Malaysia, and also those who have given the opportunity to host this as a form of Dhammadana. Dhammadana is the highest form of dana. May these great merits fulfill all the aspirations of the sponsors of the day today. And our Reverend Dato Dr. Sumana mentioned one of the important gentlemen passed away, and he also shared these powerful merits in his journey to the happiness and lasting peace, liberation. Also, the sponsors of the Day to Day program, may they rejoice in the merits and attain the bliss of Nibbana, the best of health and protection in this very life, and their family members. And also to most venerable monks of the Buddhist Mahavihara, and to the last, not to the least, to our Mr. Tilak Leslie for making a lot of effort to host this program. May you all be well and happy. Finally, monks would like to make a short anumodana, sharing of merits, rejoicing in merits, and also to finish with a short blessing. So keep the palms together to get the final anumodana. Ichitang pachitang tuihang hipameva samijjatu sabbe purentu citta sankappa chando panna raso yata yurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha Ato nibbana sampatti minate samijjatu.
Thank you, Venerable Sirs. So we've come to the end, and on behalf of the Committee of Management as well as the monks of the Buddhist Mahavihara, let me take this opportunity to thank both the Venerable Sirs for taking time off this afternoon. I think it's almost we have just missed your dana. I hope not you've not missed your dana. And I was also told that in London it's now 2 degrees centigrade, so it must be pretty cold there for you. And thank you for taking time off to be with us this evening, and also to our sponsors, as Bhante mentioned, and also to all our listeners. We have quite a number of listeners this evening who are following us. As you know, we will normally post this edited video on YouTube. Please do join us on our YouTube channel, the Buddhist Mahavihara Dhammadana channel. So with that, we've come to this evening's end of this evening's program. So with that, thank you very much, and a good night and a pleasant evening. Sadhu to all.